The room erupted in laughter the moment Daniel stumbled over his words. He stood in the center of the luxury conference hall, his old suit slightly wrinkled, his shoes worn from years of hard work. Around him sat executives, investors, and business owners dressed in tailored clothing that cost more than his monthly rent. One woman laughed louder than anyone else. Vanessa, the glamorous CEO of a billion-dollar fashion company, leaned back in her chair with a smirk. "Are you serious?" she asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You expect us to believe someone like you understands luxury branding?" More laughter filled the room. Daniel lowered his eyes for a second. Years of being underestimated had taught him that arguing rarely changed minds. But today felt different. He quietly adjusted the folder in his hands and smiled. "If you're laughing," he said calmly, "I suppose my appearance has already distracted everyone from the real competition." The room suddenly grew quieter. Vanessa crossed her arms. "And what competition would that be?" Daniel looked directly at her. "The one where ideas matter more than expensive watches." A few people exchanged nervous glances. The moderator cleared his throat and invited Daniel to begin his presentation. He connected his laptop to the projector. The first slide appeared. Instead of flashy graphics, it showed a simple sentence. "People don't buy luxury because it's expensive. They buy it because it makes them feel seen." The audience became silent. Daniel continued with confidence. He explained how modern customers no longer trusted perfect advertisements. They wanted authenticity, real stories, and brands that respected ordinary people. Every statistic was backed by research. Every prediction matched current market trends. Within 10 minutes, even the people who had laughed earlier were taking notes. Vanessa's smile slowly disappeared. She interrupted. "Interesting theory." Daniel nodded politely. "It's not theory." He clicked to the next slide. "It comes from 5 years of studying customer behavior while working anonymously inside retail stores." Another slide appeared. Photos showed Daniel sweeping floors, stocking shelves, helping elderly customers, and listening to families who couldn't afford designer products. The audience looked surprised. "You worked there yourself?" someone asked. Daniel smiled. "Every weekend." "But, why?" "Because reports tell you what people buy." He paused. "Conversations tell you why." The room became completely silent. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. She suddenly recognized one of the stores in the photos. Months earlier she had visited that location without introducing herself. She remembered seeing a quiet employee helping an elderly woman choose a birthday gift she could afford. That employee had been Daniel. She had walked right past him without noticing. Now she realized the man she had laughed at understood customers better than anyone in the room. Daniel finished his presentation with one final slide. "Respect is the first luxury every customer deserves." For several seconds, nobody moved. Then one investor slowly stood up. He began applauding. Another followed. Soon the entire conference hall rose to its feet. The standing ovation lasted nearly a minute. Vanessa remained seated. Not because she disagreed. Because she felt ashamed. When the applause finally ended, the moderator announced that the judges had reached a unanimous decision. Daniel's proposal had received the highest score in the competition's history. The winning contract was worth millions. Reporters rushed toward him. Cameras flashed from every direction. One journalist asked the obvious question. "Mr. Carter, how did you stay so calm after being laughed at?" Daniel looked across the room toward Vanessa before answering. "My father used to tell me something." He smiled warmly. "If someone laughs before hearing your story, they're only revealing how little they know." The room fell quiet again. Vanessa slowly walked toward him. For the first time all afternoon, she wasn't smiling. "I'm sorry," she said sincerely. I judged you before you spoke. Daniel nodded. You weren't the first. She looked down. And I hope I'm the last. Daniel extended his hand. The good thing about respect, he replied, is that it can begin at any moment. She shook his hand. The photographers captured the moment. Not because a billionaire and an unknown consultant had made peace, but because everyone present had witnessed something far more valuable than a business victory. They had watched humility defeat arrogance without raising its voice. As people left the conference hall, many executives quietly removed the invisible labels they placed on strangers every day. Some called old friends they had ignored. Others thanked employees they had taken for granted. One simple presentation had become something much bigger than a competition. It became a reminder that confidence never needs expensive clothes, and wisdom rarely announces itself before it speaks. Daniel walked outside carrying the same worn briefcase he had brought that morning. The $1 million contract was tucked inside. Yet the greatest victory wasn't the money. It was proving that dignity cannot be measured by appearances. Sometimes the loudest laughter lasts only a moment. But the truth that silences it can echo for a lifetime. Daniel's unexpected victory spread across the business world before sunset. By the following morning, clips of the conference had accumulated millions of views online. The moment that drew the most attention wasn't his presentation, it was the instant Vanessa had laughed at him. Viewers replayed it repeatedly, pairing it with the standing ovation that came later. Headlines called it the fastest reputation reversal of the year. Daniel ignored them all. Instead of celebrating in expensive restaurants, he returned to the small neighborhood where he had grown up. His mother was watering flowers outside the modest house where he had spent his childhood. She smiled the moment she saw him. So, she teased, "Did your little meeting go well?" Daniel laughed. "I think it did." He handed her the newspaper folded under his arm. The front page displayed his photograph beneath a bold headline announcing the winner of the international branding competition. Tears filled her eyes. "I always knew this day would come," she whispered. Daniel hugged her tightly. "No," he replied. "You believed it would come. That's different." Later that week, his inbox overflowed with offers. Companies wanted him as a consultant. Universities invited him to speak. Television networks requested exclusive interviews. He politely declined almost all of them. There was only one invitation he accepted. Vanessa's company wanted him to evaluate their customer experience from top to bottom. Many people expected him to refuse. After all, she had humiliated him in front of hundreds of people. But Daniel believed revenge was a poor investment. When he entered the company's headquarters a week later, employees greeted him with respect. Vanessa personally welcomed him at the entrance. This time, she said with a nervous smile, "I'd like to hear every idea before making an opinion." Daniel nodded. That's all anyone can ask. Over the next 3 days, he visited every department. He spoke with receptionists before executives. He ate lunch with warehouse workers instead of board members. He spent hours listening to customer service representatives answer complaints. Whenever someone asked why he focused so much on ordinary employees, his answer never changed. They're the people customers remember. On the final afternoon, Daniel presented his findings. The boardroom remained completely silent as he revealed photographs, interviews, and customer feedback gathered during his visit. "The products are beautiful," he explained. "The marketing is impressive." He paused before continuing. "But people don't stay loyal because of beautiful products." Another slide appeared. "They stay loyal because someone makes them feel respected." Several executives lowered their heads. Daniel shared examples of security guards greeting visitors warmly, cleaners helping lost customers, and sales associates patiently assisting elderly shoppers. "Your strongest brand ambassadors," he said, "aren't your advertisements." He smiled. "They're your people." Vanessa listened carefully. This time she didn't interrupt once. When the presentation ended, she stood before the board. "I've spent years investing in buildings, campaigns, and technology," she admitted. "But I forgot the simplest investment of all." She turned toward Daniel. "Kindness." The board unanimously approved every recommendation. Instead of spending millions on another advertising campaign, they invested in employee training, customer care, and community programs. 6 months later, the company's customer satisfaction reached its highest level in history. Sales increased beyond expectations. Business magazines praised the strategy as revolutionary. Daniel simply smiled whenever people called him a genius. "It wasn't genius," he always answered. "It was listening." One afternoon, Vanessa visited a small retail store owned by her company. She watched quietly as a young cashier patiently helped an elderly customer count every dollar before purchasing a birthday gift. The line behind them grew longer. Nobody complained. The cashier never rushed her. When the customer finally left smiling, Vanessa recognized something. Months earlier, she would have judged that employee for working too slowly. Now she understood. The extra 3 minutes had earned something no advertisement could ever buy. Trust. As she walked outside, she noticed Daniel sitting on a nearby bench enjoying a cup of coffee. "You were right," she admitted. He looked up with a grin. "About what?" "Respect really is the first luxury every customer deserves." Daniel chuckled. "And the best part?" She raised an eyebrow. "It doesn't cost a fortune." For a moment, neither of them spoke. People hurried along the busy sidewalk, each carrying invisible stories the world knew nothing about. Vanessa watched them carefully. Some wore expensive suits. Others wore faded uniforms. Some looked confident. Others looked exhausted. She realized she could no longer tell who was successful simply by looking. Appearances had fooled her once. She refused to let them fool her again. Daniel finished his coffee and stood. As they walked away together, Vanessa asked one final question. "If I hadn't laughed that day, would your speech have been any different?" Daniel smiled thoughtfully. "No." "Why not?" "Because my goal was never to prove you wrong." He looked ahead with quiet confidence. "It was to prove that respect always has the final word." Vanessa nodded silently. For the first time in years, she understood that true success wasn't measured by wealth, titles, or applause. It was measured by how many people felt valued after meeting you. And that lesson was worth far more than any $1 million contract. Months passed, and the story that had once dominated headlines slowly faded from the news. But for Daniel, the real success was only beginning. The changes he had introduced transformed Vanessa's company into one of the most respected brands in the industry. Customers didn't just praise the products anymore, they praised the people behind them. Reviews repeatedly mentioned the same thing. "They treat you like you matter." Daniel smiled every time he read those words. That had always been his goal. One rainy afternoon, he received an unexpected phone call. It was the organizer of the same international business conference where everything had changed. "We'd like you to return this year," the organizer said. "As a contestant?" Daniel asked. The man laughed. "No. As our keynote speaker." Daniel accepted. When the day arrived, the conference hall looked even grander than before. More than 2,000 entrepreneurs, students, executives, and investors filled every seat. This time, when Daniel walked onto the stage wearing the same simple style he had always preferred, no one laughed. Instead, the audience welcomed him with warm applause. Among those sitting in the front row was Vanessa. Not as a judge. Not as a celebrity CEO. Simply as someone eager to learn. Daniel stood behind the podium for a moment without speaking. The silence captured everyone's attention. Then he smiled. "A year ago," he began, "I walked onto this stage carrying fear." A large screen behind him displayed a photograph from the previous conference. The image showed people laughing while Daniel stood quietly at the front of the room. Many in the audience recognized it immediately. "I could have spent the last year proving those people wrong," Daniel continued. But something more important happened. The screen changed. Now it showed smiling employees helping customers, volunteers serving meals at community events, and children receiving school supplies funded by Vanessa's company. "When people change," Daniel said softly, "everyone wins." The audience listened in complete silence. Daniel spent the next hour sharing stories, not about billion-dollar contracts, but about ordinary acts of kindness. He spoke about a janitor who comforted a frightened child. A receptionist who remembered the name of a lonely elderly customer. A delivery driver who stayed after work to help a disabled man carry groceries inside. "They'll never appear on magazine covers," Daniel said. "But they are the reason great organizations survive." The audience erupted into applause. When the speech ended, students surrounded him with questions. One young man looked nervous. "Sir," he asked, "what if people laugh at my dreams?" Daniel smiled kindly. "They probably will." The young man's shoulders dropped. "But listen carefully." Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder. "Laughter is only an opinion." He pointed toward the stage behind them. "Character is a decision." The young man nodded, his eyes shining with determination. Nearby, Vanessa watched the conversation quietly. She remembered the woman she had been 1 year earlier. Impatient. Proud. Quick to judge. She barely recognized that version of herself. Later that evening, the conference organizers announced a surprise award. The Human Impact Leadership Award. The presenter smiled. "This honor is given not for creating the biggest profits, but for changing the greatest number of lives." Everyone already knew the winner. Daniel Carter. The audience stood before his name had even finished echoing through the hall. As Daniel accepted the award, he looked across the crowd. "I can't accept this alone," he said. People looked confused. He turned toward Vanessa. "Would you join me?" The audience watched as she slowly walked onto the stage. Daniel handed her the award. She stepped back immediately. "No," she whispered. "You earned this." Daniel gently shook his head. "No." The microphone caught every word. "A leader deserves credit for success." He paused. "But an even greater leader deserves credit for having the courage to